Hello and welcome to video lecture 9 of Jewelry Design and Sketching. In today's video lecture, we'll take what we've learned about bead setting and apply it to rendering pavé. Anyone who's tried their hand at it will agree that a good stone layout, and I mean one that fully meets professional trade criteria, is like solving the Rubik's Cube. However, as with any puzzle, there are certain strategies and tricks that go straight to the heart of the problem. Once you recognize these and their implications, you'll be able to take full advantage of the versatility of pavé. I'm in the midst of making a stone layout on a Chinese dragon here. As a matter of fact, I've traced a blurry photograph from the internet of a jade carving that dates back to the 3rd century BC or prior, and I can't get over the sense of curvature continuity this jade carver had. There are no kinks or inconsistencies whatsoever anywhere in the outline, as though he'd been working in CAD, and by this you can tell his knowledge of geometry was incredibly advanced. You might think it pointless to freehand so intricate a stone layout, but then this sketch will give the customer a better idea than the most eloquent of verbal descriptions ever could. As for myself, I'll get a far better grasp of the quantity and dimensions of the stones from this sketch than if I did this off the top of my head. The effort involved will be well worthwhile, because even a quick over-the-thumb estimate for costing metal, stones and labor will be much more accurate. And when it comes to laying out the dragon and the pavé for the real thing, whether I'll be fabricating in metal or drawing in CAD, I'll certainly use a sketch as a roadmap, because although it isn't that accurate, it will get me ahead of the curve. Now, when a layout gets potentially tricky, be resourceful on how to get the most out of the papers you're using. I've traced the dragon on one side of the sheet of vellum, and since I expect some erasing and redrawing to take place, I've turned it over and I'm now working on the back. No matter how much I need to make corrections on this side of the vellum, it won't affect the outline of our fabulous dragon overleaf. Using a sheet of white paper underneath the vellum provides the best possible contrast with the graphite and optimizes the visibility of every nuance of my drawing. This is my standard setup when I'm drawing on vellum, where I can use both sides. Perhaps you'll come up with something that works even better for you. Think streamlining your workflow to save time and nerves. And with this general overview, let's go to our next segment and put the things we've learned in the previous video lecture to good use. If you've never worked in a goldsmith studio, these items can be baffling. An optimized stone layout at the end of a row of pavé, at corners, or where rows intersect is a very valid component in jewelry design. Let's start with the ends. In a previous segment, we'd seen that with the box stone layout, the ends were square and practically did themselves. In the right context, this can be just what you're looking for. With an interlocking stone layout, the ends favor a 60-degree angle. This can be completely inappropriate in some contexts, but say you had a center stone that is of a somewhat less common cut. The originally awkward 2 interlocking rows might just do the trick, and very elegantly so. Contrary to the boxed layout, you can even curve this one's bright cut so as to nicely echo the curvature of the center stone's girdle. You could also curve the bright cut at the end of the 3 interlocking rows so the fictitious ring shank joins with the center stone setting at a point, making what is a potentially wide ring appear airier and lighter, with a ring shank that literally points at the center stone. What a great way to put the spotlight on the big stone. Here's a classic, the stone layout down the side of a diamond solitaire, traditional style. In the ideology of this school of fine jewelry, metal is a little bit something of the necessary, well, I shouldn't say evil, but it's what's needed to hold the all-important stones. Ring shanks often are inversely tapered, meaning they are narrower at the top, which makes them appear more dainty and elegant on the finger. More metal at the bottom of the shank adds not only more strength to it, but it is also a counterweight designed to keep the head standing up and presenting itself its best on the finger. The top also ends in a tip like our previous, heavier example, and in order to avoid a plain square ending, the bright cut below the last and largest stone at the bottom is cut to an elegant W that echoes the tip at the opposite end. Should the angle show too much open metal, an additional ornamental bead or two are added as you see here. And what about bead settings that are to reach the very corners of pointy components? At one point it is no longer economical or physically possible to set an ever smaller stone. That's when you might have 2 beads, perhaps even 2 rows of beads that eventually get so small that they're continued as 1 row until you see only the crisply cut, angled end. If you have the same scenario for multiple rows, you essentially find a way to step down the rows of stones toward the point. And when you get to the beads inside the point, you arrange them in like manner. And what about angles like, say, those in an ornamental row of stones or a square or rectangular halo? Give priority to placing a stone dead in the corner. That will emphasize a corner and literally punctuate it. If you put a stone either side of the corner, you'll probably need to fill the outside gap with a small stone. It breaks the rhythm of your stone pattern and visually de-emphasizes the corner. With a miniature sculpture like a fine piece of jewelry, that's working against yourself. And if your corners are less than 90 degrees, placing a stone dead in them is even more important. Not only does the stone arrangement at right require more beads to fill open areas, not what you want in a quality bead setting, it also takes the crispness out of the shape. When you look at the stone arrangement of corners involving curves, as you might find with halos around pear shapes or marquises, you can't help but reach the same conclusion. You want a stone dead center where the curves intersect to hold the rhythm of the stone pattern and to punctuate them in no uncertain way. Let me remind you that the real thing is only a fraction of the scale of what I'm enlarging here to bring the point across. When you get two intersecting rows of bead set stones, the same holds true. On the surface, this stone layout isn't too bad. I followed the first rule of Pavé in that there aren't any areas that are void of stones. But that's only because you haven't seen the real solution yet. Here, each corner and intersection is punctuated by a stone dead center. What's more, I'm only setting 61 stones instead of the previous version 67, and in this version here the total carat weight of the stones is greater. The combination of higher intrinsic value and lower labor cost is always easier to sell.